you. Thank you for everyone who is here today with Jaclyn and I. I'm super excited to talk with Jaclyn. I want to put us both on here. Okay, good. So thank you, Jaclyn, for being here. I know
Sure.
Jaclyn because we first met through our mutual friend Gretchen, and I actually helped Jaclyn with her welcome series. But when I think the best part of it was that I was actually her ideal client. When I started going through everything, was like, oh my gosh, this is like so me. And then recently, Jaclyn did this post on Instagram where she talked about high functioning anxiety. And I've always known I've suffered from anxiety, for forever. It's always been something that I've battled. But what I didn't even realize until just a few weeks ago was like how it's in every area of my life. And these ways that we don't recognize what high functioning anxiety is. So Jaclyn, tell us a little bit about you, and then we'll talk a little bit about what high functioning anxiety is.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so I'm Jaclyn Bacon. I'm a holistic nurse practitioner. So my traditional training as a nurse practitioner, but I've always been into integrative and functional medicine. Most people don't really know what functional medicine is, but basically it's root cause medicine. So looking at the deep dive imbalances and then really restoring those. So it's a different toolbox, more natural approach. And it's more of not putting a Band-Aid on things, but really more looking at those root causes and reversing them for good. So that's what I do in a virtual practice setting as a health coach. And I work with pretty much women and moms exclusively. And I focus on anxiety and gut health, restoring that, as well as balancing hormones and the compilation of symptoms that go with it, with mama and women like us.
Right. And you not only is this where you're trained in, but you've had some of these own struggles of yourself for yourself, right?
Yes. Yeah, that's what made me really passionate about it. And, I had that background, but then when I went through it more postpartum, so especially as I had my two boys, and, it's like that cumulative effect. You have these pregnancies that deplete you, busy nurse practitioner role. And then I didn't realize kind of how this high functioning anxiety was showing up in my life. So it led to more depletion and burnout. And then the anxiety really showed up in like insomnia, more fatigue, not being able to turn it off. And then I really went to the traditional realm and even functional medicine providers, but they still didn't really do deep dive testing. They just looked at my conventional labs. Hey, looks good, normal, healthy. Okay, that's not, it really was showing up for the first time postpartum for me that it affected my life. So before, I always excelled in these areas, but I knew there was more going on under the surface and nobody was really providing me those answers. So that's when I did functional medicine testing on myself. And I'm like, yeah, I'm like so depleted in magnesium. That's your relaxing, mineral that is dependent for 300 biochemical processes. Oh, I have tested my thyroid antibodies, and I have early thyroid issues that could turn into full-blown, you need medication for life if I didn't address and reverse it with nutrition and stress management and reducing toxins and things. And so that was just a few of the examples of the answers I got, and really customizing results for me so I can feel my best. I wasn't really willing to settle till I'll just wait till 5 years till I have a disease and I need a medication for life, So I was kind of at this crossroads of they're going to give me pills, but I wanted answers and not to keep going down pill after pill road and getting worse.
Right. I think you said something there too. It's like you're stressed out, which depletes yourself more. It's like a vicious cycle that we don't even know we're putting ourselves through.
Yeah.
If I heard you say it right.
Exactly. Yeah. And that self-awareness, I didn't have a lot of that. I didn't learn that. I wasn't modeled that, like how even to know what my needs are. I felt like I learned that at 30 something. Hey, what are my needs? Listen to my needs, tune into my emotions, my physical symptoms, and recognizing those early cues and meeting them in simple ways daily, rather than waiting for that threshold of not noticing stress or anxiety till it's like 8 out of 10. Well, that takes a lot longer time, resources, energy to mitigate that. So tuning in and kind of learning the tools for myself was a big part of it too.
Wow. Well, when I saw your post, and I was, like I said, I've always known if anyone's hung out with me for about a minute, or even especially on my email list, like anxiety is something that that has eluded me, but I didn't realize. So some of the things that you mentioned in this post that I want to talk about was perfectionism,
Yeah.
overworking, having a hard time relaxing. Like I joke around, I actually get more stressed when I try and relax because I start thinking like, oh my gosh, there's so much to do, right? There's so many things I could be doing. Why am I just sitting here?
Right.
I'm trying to remember some of the other ones. I should have written them down. I had them down so pat
Yeah,
the
like
other day.
people pleasing is a big
Oh
common
my
one,
gosh.
and difficulty saying no or needing reassurance, like, am I doing this right? Or always wanting other resources before we take action. And
I'm like the poster child for high functioning anxiety. It's like when I went through your list, I was like, oh yeah, it's each one of these. Like I can
right.
totally me. So I guess at one point, how do you know it's high functioning anxiety versus, a lot of times we could say I've always been a people pleaser. I've always
Right.
wanted reassurance, right?
Right.
I think one of the things but the only one like on your list that you had, I didn't feel like it was me, was like my routine being disrupted, because I feel like with three
Right.
teenagers, like I'm just holding on for
Have to
dear
go with
life.
it.
Yeah. Like if I had
Right.
that one, I'd really be in trouble. Even today I had an emergency. Like my daughter was like, oh mom, I need a sports physical by tomorrow. And I'm like, what are you talking about? It's like, it's Monday.
Right.
Like I had,
Yeah.
we,
How am I
yeah,
going to get this?
how am I going
Yeah.
to get this? So it's like
Yeah.
those kind of things that are always coming up with my kids. So I'm sure it is. But how do we know the difference when it's anxiety or when it's actually, just kind of the way we are?
Yeah. Well, I think it's looking at how it affects you in your relationships, just like anything. So even when you're looking at your symptoms or you're looking at, high functioning anxiety and these tendencies are actually have been ingrained in a lot of us as our personality and can be very adaptive as young kids. We learned these tools. Like I learned, hey, I had to adapt and take care of my own needs in a lot of ways. And so they were adaptive for a certain period of time. But as adults and chronically, like chronic stress and these chronic people pleasing, chronic self sacrificing, need for control, or having difficulty recognizing our own needs and meeting them well, chronically, those just lead to a lot of depletion, holding us back, unnecessary like lack of peace or joy, right? So it's kind of looking at, sometimes we're so used to that status quo of how we feel that we don't know how well we could feel when we address these things over time, right? We're just so used to fatigue or headaches or gut issues or these variety of things, or, oh, okay, I have a little more maybe drama in my relationships, or different things. But how that manifests over time, we often have a triggering event or something that spurs like, I need to address things and I need to take care of myself better here.
Right. No, I think that's true. And so when, what are the first steps to be like, okay, I kind of see a little bit of this in myself. Like if someone had just found you, or maybe they have because you're in the group with us, like what would be like the first steps? What would you tell someone to kind of start getting a hold of what they should do, and when they know it's at the point that they really need to see someone like yourself to help overcome some of these things? Because I know
Right.
with me, I always joke around too, like if I didn't have like anxiety, I'd be unstoppable, right? Like if you didn't, because I
Yes.
do think it holds you up, in terms of, I think, people pleasing or worried, like, that you're
Yeah.
going to upset someone. I know I've spent days where I've sent out an email really quick and I'd be like, oh my gosh, could they take this the wrong way? Maybe they're going to take it like
Right.
this. And then I spent half the day, it drives my husband crazy. And he's just like, what are you
Yeah.
talking about? Like, and so
Yeah.
I think it's like the
Overthinking.
overthinking. Oh my gosh. Yes. Right. Like
Right.
every
Right.
action that you do, I'm sure that's part of it too, is part of that perfectionism. Like you never want to mess
Yeah.
up. So like
Right.
if someone is like this, like what do you recommend as the first steps?
Yeah. First step, I love always addressing self awareness. So the fact that we're having these conversations, that you're self aware, that's the first thing. And really, some of the key things that I love to plug more into self-awareness, and it may be uncomfortable and it may be weird at first, is practicing those kind of self check-ins. And so checking in throughout your day and learning to tune into yourself, like developing that relationship with yourself, but attaching it to something that you already do. So, almost every mom or person has a little downtime when they're taking a shower, that they're not interrupted as much. So like having that be a place where you're checking in, what does that self check-in look like? Like scan your body, notice what's my stress level at a time right now, and without judgment or having to do anything about it. It's just a time to be curious of what you're experiencing and look at, oh, what's my emotions? At first, I didn't even know how to tune into my emotions.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, you're talking, I was like, oh my gosh, I've never even, besides when I'm freaking out, right? And I know I'm emotional, like
Right.
never have like stopped to pause and take the time
Yeah.
to really think about it.
Yeah. And learning that language of almost kind of distancing yourself like you're an outsider. Like, oh, I'm noticing I feel fear, anxiety. I am not fear. I'm not that.
Right.
But just noticing your experience. And then when you feel that, you may feel it somewhere in your body. And then that gives you information that later on in the day, oh, what can I do for myself? And rather than going about your day, keep going, going. And then that fear may push us to do more. And then we kind of raise your threshold and we realize we're irritable with our family, our relationships, we don't get as good enough sleep. Like, oh, I have that information. And then later on, what can I do? Oh, wind down in the evening and maybe I'll read a book. Maybe I'll take a bath. And maybe you don't do anything about it. But the fact of that self-awareness, that does something really powerful.
Yeah. And I'm guessing, especially as women, or even if you're busy like me, I think about it like half the time in the shower, I'm like, oh, I'll listen to a podcast while I take a shower, or I'll do, right? It's kind of like
Right.
you're never ever, I think we get into, and you can tell me since you know, but you get into this busy routine that even if you have those free moments, if you're
Yes.
someone like me, you're like, oh, let's figure out a way to squeeze something else in there, right?
Yes.
So
that was totally me before. And I think society, we've been conditioned to really prioritize productivity over ourselves and this illusion of productivity. Whereas really the most productive thing you can often do is like take that 5 or 10 minutes of just quiet time. And it's foreign at first and it may feel uncomfortable because it's easier to distract ourselves. It's easier to numb. It's easier to do these different things, but it becomes so much, once you notice the positive effects, that's where you continue those habits. So if you notice the positive reward, like, oh, wow, I had a really enjoyable day. I noticed more gratitude. I had more joy or peace. As you focus on that more, then you're going to want to do those things more.
totally. I know that I cut out gluten in the fall a while. This is kind of like a side note, but it makes me think of this. And I removed gluten from my diet. And coincidentally, which wasn't even why I did it, my migraines went way down, especially like I didn't notice, like I'm a sugaraholic, especially if I'm feeling a little stressed during the day. So I'll have like cookies or something at night before I go to bed, and I'd wake up with, I would have migraines constantly, and or not constantly, but pretty often. But I've had migraines since I was a kid. This is just what I have. I just have these migraines. And then all of a sudden I started, because I was removing it and then I would add it back in. I'd be like, oh my gosh, this is totally triggering me. And I didn't even know. And since I've stopped, now sometimes I'm just glutton for punishment and do it anyway. But every time now I wake up, I'm like, yeah, I learned my lesson. Like, and I'm guessing it's the same with like this realization with like anxiety. It's like, you don't even realize how bad you probably feel until you start going through, and like you said, becoming a little bit more aware of who you are and what, if you can remove it from your life. Although I wish removing anxiety was as easy as not eating bread and eating a cookie at night. Yeah. I guess that's where I want to like leave off in our discussion. It's like, I think when it comes to emotions, it can feel hard, like to change, right? It's not like, okay, I'm just going to be
Right.
disciplined and not eat gluten,
Right.
so if someone's
Totally.
overwhelmed thinking, how do I even do this? Like, is it possible? Like, give us some hope,
Oh, yeah.
Jaclyn. Give me some hope.
Yeah. Well, there's so many different ways, because anxiety is really just the tip of the iceberg, a symptom. It's not telling us causes. Root causes are so dependent on the person. So, okay, what's the root cause? Like you said, nutrition, right? So you'll even notice probably as you eliminate gluten or different inflammatory foods that, okay, you have less brain fog or less inflammation or less, neuroinflammation and different things, and even affect your mood and irritability. So it's like nutrition is so key. If you're going through, some people have anxiety more that it's blood sugar related. So your blood sugar crashes, your cortisol, your stress hormone goes up. So that feels like adrenaline. So knowing kind of what's at play for you, if you're eating more simple carbohydrates and you're not having, a substantial amount of protein and fat with every meal and some more whole fiber rich foods, that's what's going to stabilize blood sugar. That's what's going to stabilize your energy, your mood more. So nutrition, and then toxins is a big one, but that takes a little more steady addressing and individualized things, simple things we can swap in our home. And I have a lot of tips of those on my Instagram too. Stress though. So stress, these are things everybody can do, super simple daily. And it's kind of an opportunity to explore what practices you enjoy. So I love going over parasympathetic nervous system tips. That's the opposite of our survival mode. So the sympathetic mode is that fight or flight, go, go, go that most of us predominantly live in. And so we need to intentionally spend more time in that parasympathetic mode that allows our body to heal, allows us to restore. That's our rest and digest and make babies and have sex mode. Like all these things, we cannot have balanced hormone, good energy if we're not in that space more. So simple things that you can incorporate that really hijack that is, deep breathing. So these are all like free medicine things. So really deep breathing. And one of my favorite hijacks to that, and it sounds weird, but it's so effective, it's called alternate nasal breathing. And so you'll breathe through one side of the nair. It's very intentional and it calms down your heart rate right away. So you'll breathe in through one nair and out through the other. And you do that for like 2 minutes. Instantly, you just feel like, ooh, so calm.
I'm totally trying that. So
yeah, it's such an easy thing in the shower before, a call or something like that. Legs up the wall, my clients love. It's so easy. So legs up the wall, it's basically like a yoga move. And so all you're doing is your body is against the wall and your legs are straight up. It helps encourage the blood flow and lymphatic system, but it also quickly lowers your heart rate. And you're not doing anything. You're just laying there, right? With your legs up the wall. And so it's something
not looking at your phone, just laying there, right?
yeah, maybe try not to look at the phone, maybe put that away, but like your kids are playing or, you're relaxing for the night or just something simple.
I've never heard that. I love that.
Yeah, so really simple things. And I love if you have grass or anything like that in your yard, putting your feet on the ground, grounding is so therapeutic and really kind of a reset for your battery. I do that often between client calls and just get outside, even if it's a few minutes. But there's so many like quick, actionable ways we can do and we have to be more intentional about that in our society, right? There's so much stimulus, there's so much distractions, there's so much go, like simple things to really connect with how our body wants to live more presently, but our modern society kind of distracts us from that.
100%. And we distract ourselves, right? Like
right.
It's easy to, yes, on blaming on society, but I just think, like we said, sometimes I know for me, it's like, okay, I got to take a moment and get into it. So, well, thank you so much. Tell people where to find you and all about your freebie that I love. And yeah,
it was so fun. Brenna was awesome. She helped me with my nurture series and my email series. That was really fun. So I did a freebie that essentially has these tips, but it's in a calendar form. And so it's a tool that you kind of print out and simple ways to really reduce stress and anxiety and boost your energy. And so you can get that just on my website, Jaclyn Bacon, Jaclyn Bacon, and look for there. I'm also on my email list. I'm going to put a lot of these parasympathetic practices out and send it out to my email list. So stay tuned for that in the next
I love that.
weeks. But,
And follow you on Instagram because you have so much great information.
Connection point.
Oh, good.
So it's just Jaclyn_Bacon. So I'd love to connect with you.
Thank you. Oh, you know what? I forgot. I'm going to take a picture of us because I forget every time.
Oh, yeah.
For everyone who's watching, I should have done it beforehand. Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you so much.